everyone. Two updates. First is a monthly update regarding preparations to implement the Princeton plan, otherwise known as grade level banding. As the board knows, and certainly the community should know, that we are moving to a different elementary organization next year, where Frank G. Lindsay will house our district's kindergarten and first graders. Buchanan Verplank Elementary School will house our second and third, and Furnace Woods will house our fourth and fifth grade. This is a very big endeavor and initiative, and we've committed to providing the community an update monthly. After tonight's discussion, we'll update our website with a dedicated webpage to communicating with the public around our transition activities and timeline and such. So want to touch on a couple major points, and then certainly entertain questions. So the first big piece of planning for this move is preparing to move. We have a number of teachers that will be moving from one school to another, and we may have teachers who are not physically moving schools. They'll be moving potentially within the school building. Why is that? Because if I'm a kindergarten teacher at Frank G. Lindsay, and I will remain a kindergarten teacher next year, that classroom may or may not be part of a kindergarten wing, depending on discussion with the prospective principal and their staff. So everyone may move. We certainly want to limit that, but at least 2/3 of our teachers will be moving from one school to the next, and so that process has begun. We've ordered boxes. We have provided them to teachers so they can begin to pack as they wish. Anthony Merlini and the team of head custodians are identifying different times and milestones throughout our school district where if teachers want to have some of their boxes moved from their classroom to either a holding facility would be in the school. Ultimately, Anthony and his team would then move them to the school that they're going to. With that, we've generated packing slips. So essentially each box will have specific information on the teacher's name, the school that they're moving from, and the school that they're moving to. So color-coded packing slips so that the custodians clearly know that certain materials and supplies are moving to a particular destination. We're encouraging teachers to pack as they go. So as they finish teaching their September or October modules or curriculum, they really have two decisions to make. What stays or what gets discarded, because in education we are really, really good at making sure our classrooms are museums of everything, all the resources we've always used. So there's a decision to be made over what they no longer need, and a decision to be made on what they want to take with them. We're not making them pack at any particular time, but certainly it's easier to pack as they go, and for them to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to need certain materials or resources for the rest of the academic year. Certainly workbooks and texts and certain materials are specific to curriculum that we teach at a particular time of the year, so if we can move that material as we go, that certainly is a goal. So they may begin packing, but that will really be up to them and to the resources that they need. Our custodians will store and move those materials, as I said, sort of a holding facility. So we may, as an interim, put some materials on a school stage or a room, classroom, or part of the school that's not being used for instruction. And then at key points throughout the year, Anthony and his team may move them from school A to school B. Those key times could be this holiday break, could also be February break, our spring break in April, and of course, over the summer. And lastly, in terms of preparing to move, the principals have visited and continue to visit their prospective school. Principals, nurses, secretaries have spent a lot of time in their new schools. They have their blueprint, they have their safety plan, they have met with the custodian of the other school, trying to get a lay for the land and understand all the intricacies of the schools that they'll be leading. They've also continued to meet both formally and informally with the principal of the school that they'll be going to understand some of the systems, because they're 3 elementary schools. were built at three different times in our history, and they are three completely different schools. Furnace Woods is on a cement pad, and the other schools are not. So there are some differences that happen, or there are some differences within the school that you need to spend some time and energy making sure you understand. In terms of staffing, that is our next major initiative. We are looking at our projected enrollment. Projected enrollment by grade level will drive how many class sections we have and how many teachers we need. So we have a board policy around class size. We have been reviewing our current enrollment and moving our current enrollment into next year's model. So we have rolled over all of the kids we have in K4 and have projected class size next year in the Princeton plan in grades 1 through 5. So we have a really good idea of how many students per grade level, how many teachers we'll need per grade level, and what the average class size will be. The unknown, of course, every year is kindergarten. Kindergarten registration is going to start in late January. We have identified and confirmed about 120 kindergartners right now, but the outreach will continue in terms of orientation, kinder camp, all of those things to make sure we try to identify as many kids that will join us in kindergarten next year. Of course, there are families that are moving into the district and moving out of the district, but kindergarten is always the unknown really until after school starts, especially for families who can't close on their home until after school starts, or families who forgot to register their children and they see the bus drive by a few times. So we have a really good handle on estimated staffing based on enrollment from our current K to 4th grade that will be transitioned into the 3 schools by grade level. We also have February 1st retirement notice. By February, the retirement notice is the last day of January, but February 1 we will know with a pretty good level of certainty teachers that have indicated that they will retire at the end of the year. That also will drive, won't drive staffing, but it will drive the particular staff that will be with us next year. If we have certain teachers who retire at the elementary level, we need to determine if they need to be replaced or not. But that will also help us identify our staffing needs for next year. After we meet those key milestones, then Margaret and Lisa and the elementary principals can start to determine which particular teacher will be teaching which particular grade level and in which school. That's really important, going back to the previous slide, because now our teachers know where they're going. Not only where they're going by school, but where they will what classroom they will be physically teaching out of. That's really important to know so that the prospective principal can say, okay, this is my 4th grade wing, this is my 5th grade wing, so on and so forth. We can start to build some schedules around collaboration and having teams within the grade level. And that's a really important thing that teachers want to know. They want to know what school they're going to, and then they want to know what their classroom is. And they will go and they will measure, and they will make sure that their desks can be organized in certain ways, or what personal belongings they may be able to bring in, or where their reading centers will be, or will they want to have their laptop cart. That's a really big deal because that's their second home, and for many people it's their first home because we spend oftentimes more time in our schools and classrooms than not. And with that is regular communication with our teachers union. The teachers union contract spells out very, very clearly the process for moving teachers, what the priorities are in terms of seniority and experience, and those are conversations that we have been having with HHEA almost weekly to make sure that everyone understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, and that it complies with the contract language. With that, we have been using our early release days for our current staff to start meeting and planning with their colleagues in their prospective school. So we've had a number of early release days so far this young school year. We have many more coming, and those have been dedicated at the elementary level to those teachers coming together to collaborate to talk about with their principal what they want their environment to look like. It doesn't happen often in public education that you get to really start over within the same district. And for our 3 principals, because they all are moving to 3 different buildings, and because they will no longer be a principal of a K-5, but 2 grade levels, it's new to them, and it's going to be new to the teachers that end up moving. Every teacher, almost every teacher, will have a new principal, but certainly will be in a new building. So they're having discussions around what they want their climate and culture to be, common language, what they value. Certainly these conversations started with some icebreakers and getting to know each other and start to build that family feel. With that, the 3 prospective schools, Margaret and Lisa have set up opportunities for them to visit with other schools that are banded in similar fashion. Whether they're banded 2 grade levels at a time, or a K-3 and a 4-5, or you name it. The idea is to learn as much as we can to plan in advance and identify some best practices and also some potential pitfalls to avoid. These meetings are with schools not only in our backyard or in Westchester County, but as far as Western New York. Because they are organized in similar fashion, and we want to learn what works and what doesn't. We want to accentuate the positive and make sure we avoid some things that they have indicated we should avoid. With that, as we are focused on the future, these groups are also very cognizant that they want to honor the past, and they want to make sure that each school gets a proper send-off. So all of the principals are working with their PTAs to honor decades, half a century more, of a model that we've had in our district that we're moving away from. So they will propose a series of recommendations with their PTA. This will include ice cream socials, it will include bringing back alumni, it can include open house with parents and barbecues, and everything is on the table right now because they want to make sure that we're not just 100% focused on next year, but that we take a moment to reflect. That's really important to that group. With that, and partnering with the PTA, I'll speak in a little bit, are plans for students and parents. Opportunities for parents to get into the new school, see the classroom, understand the layout, know where to park, know what the pick-up and drop-off customs will be, and also meet their new principal. So part of the time that the group is spending together in early release days are to make sure that we have some operational opportunities to work with parents and, of course, students on the operations end. And also this group is proposing making sure they have time to come together as a new faculty in the summer. Again, to continue the work that they've begun during early release days, because in the summer is when it's real. People are going to be moved in, they're going to be ready to go, and then we start focusing on opening day. And we have fallen into a routine of having staff come back at least 2 days before we open school, right after Labor Day. We may need to make adjustments to that calendar to provide some more time for the elementary folks to come together to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. One of the big ticket items that I know parents are interested in is transportation. And I know we've said this before, but it's worth repeating. Start and end times for the 3 schools next year will remain unchanged. All right? Furnace Woods will start and end a little bit earlier, the school for 4th and 5th grade. That will be a huge relief to some families that will have a student going to Furnace Woods and have a student going to any of the other elementary schools, because that bus will come a little bit earlier. Our policy is that students, at least in 4th and 5th grade, can wait for the bus by themselves and be dropped off by themselves. So trying to demonstrate a little more independence. Furnace Woods, so the 4th and 5th graders, will have their own bus. What that means is the buses will travel the district for that Furnace Woods pickup and drop off separately. So that bus will only have 4th and 5th grade students on it, all right? Which means the buses for Frank G and BV, K1 and 2-3, will only have kindergartners through 3rd graders on it, all right? So there will not be buses with kindergartners and 4th or 5th graders They will be separate now because they're going to separate schools. So we will have a bus run that will pick up students around the district that will go to Frank G and BV in the morning. And in the afternoon, those buses will be separate. So there'll be a group of buses that will pick up our kindergartners and first graders at Frank G, and they will send them home. There will be buses that pick up our second and third graders at BV and send those kids home. As opposed to in the morning, if where I live, you could have kindergartners and third graders on the bus that would drop kids off at Frank G and then the BV, or vice versa. In the afternoon, they are on a direct flight home. So afternoon bus rides will be shorter than morning bus rides, which lead us to bus rides. The estimated bus rides right now are under, or we're looking to make sure bus rides are under 40 minutes. There are some outliers, and Liz and the transportation team are going to look at those outliers in mid-January and propose some alternatives, and that could be vans or small buses that will pick up, rather than 40 or 50 kids on a bus, it may pick up a dozen of students that live in some of the corners of our district, and we'll be able to get those kids to school much quicker. So our goal is 40 minutes, and every route that our computer system generates over 40 minutes is going to be adjusted if possible. And lastly, this is important as well. Almost all of our children will have a new bus stop because their bus is going to a different destination and may pick them up and drop them off at a different time. We heard last year concerns that bus rides might be an hour or an hour and 20 minutes, and that is not the case and won't be the case. However, the fewer bus stops that we have, the quicker and more efficient our bus ride is. So part of planning the logistics of picking kids up and dropping them off at school is to try to condense bus stops so we have fewer opportunities to stop and go, so that the bus ride can be quicker. Now, that does not mean that students who live on Albany Post Road are going to be crossing that road or walking down Watch Hill without a sidewalk. That is not what that means. What it does mean is that in certain neighborhoods that have very low traffic, or that are neighborhoods and not cut-throughs, students may have to walk down a couple driveways to get in on a stop or get on the bus with other kids, rather than some of the benefits we've been able to afford, where every child has their own stop at the end of the driveway. So those will be evaluated as well. That's Liz's project in January. And lastly, supporting parents. We work with our elementary PTAs to send out a survey to elementary parents. And I hope that our elementary parents take the time to respond to that survey. That survey was completely authored by the PTAs. What we had said was, here's the information we want to know from parents so we can plan some FAQs, some Q&A sessions, and identify some resources to support parents if they have questions or concerns about transitions, or how are we going to support students moving from school A to school B. So the PTA sent out that survey. We have well over 1,000 elementary parents. About a week ago, I believe the elementary PTAs received 87 surveys back. So we want to make sure that parents take the time to complete it. It's an open-ended survey. It is not a point and click. It is not pre-slugged. So it is, for a parent taking the survey, we need a little detail from them, and maybe that's why we have a low response rate. But we did not want to have the appearance of leading anyone's responses, by having them check something. We wanted them to be able to input it themselves. But we have a pretty low response rate. I know it's the holidays and everyone's going a little crazy, but that feedback will help drive some of our initiatives to help parents and do some more outreach with them after the new year. So I hope that they can do that. I think the survey closes next week. It's been out for almost a month, I believe. And part of what we'll do with that, depending on what the feedback or input includes, is being able to line up parents with other parents that are in the grade band at school. I know that talking to one of our principals, talking to some of the PTAs today, the PTA leaders have been meeting together to talk about how they will organize next year. And they have been meeting with PTAs in other grade banded schools. And the conversation always gets to, well, what's your experience and what do you think, and so on and so forth. And, so there have been a lot of really good organic discussions of other parents who are in this model talking to ours and giving them some very direct feedback and suggestions. So we want to continue that. We want to continue to partner with other schools. As I said earlier, Margaret and Lisa have reached out to schools across the state that are organized by grade level. We may go back to them and ask them if our parents can speak to some of their parents, because as we're concerned, or as a parent is concerned of a child going from school A to school B and eventually school C, there are schools who have perfected that model and perfected that support who have been in that model as long as we have been in ours. So the whole idea is to identify some best practice and find folks who live it every day to give not only our teachers and our leaders, but certainly our parents some suggestions. So our next steps, one of the board goals this year was to make sure we have this conversation and updates at a board meeting. So we'll come back in January. We'll have some, we'll have some news in terms of what class sizes will look like, number of teachers per section. In January, we'll give you an update on MOVE, and we'll give you an update on some of the priorities that came from the PTA survey and what our plans are to address some of the questions and concerns that come from that document and that outreach.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions from the board trustees? Yes, Allie.
Do we have any idea how Mother Connection is going to work?
That's a really good question. We don't know. I know that they are working with the Westchester Child Care Council, which is their accreditation. They may need to fill out paperwork to be organized a little bit differently because I think they're credentialed to have certain, a wider span of students from ages 5 to 10 or K to 5. I know when I spoke with their director a couple weeks ago, she and her board were actually going through the decision-making process of how they wanted to be organized. We told them that if they chose to organize, have a K-5 program in all 3 of the schools, we may be able to support transportation. The iffy piece is what happens at Furnace Woods, because Furnace Woods instruction starts earlier. But that is, we will continue to provide them space, but I don't know how they'll organize themselves or staff it.
But
it's on the radar.
Okay.
Yes.
And because it's a priority and it's for many families, that's the only way they can make the before and after school care a priority. So as long as it's on our radar screen, so we can make it happen for families.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bill?
Joe, you mentioned that the bus routes were going to be 2 schools delivering the students at the same time to both the K through 3, but then on the way home it'll be 2 separate bus runs, individual for each school. What is the cause or rationale of that? Because you think what's efficient for one would be efficient for the other, so I'm just curious, what's the rationale or cause for that?
The rationale is when the buses leave the Furnace Woods drop-off, they can begin the pickup for the 2 other schools. So the buses that drop off at Furnace Woods are already on the eastern part of our district. They'll start picking up the K through 3. So you don't have 2 buses going through the same neighborhood to pick up K1 only and then 2, 3. So we have a little more efficiency with our buses in the morning. And if we have 40 children on a bus coming from the eastern part of our district near the middle school, let's say, they would, depending on the route, depending on the logistics or what the computer system suggests, they may drop off the K1 at Frank G first and then drive 5 more minutes and do the 2, 3 or vice versa. on the way home, it was quicker to get the kids home directly from the school and not do that switch, not do 10 buses leaving Frank G and going to BV and vice versa. Because usually putting kids on the bus, especially that age, can take anywhere between 12 and 18 minutes. And so the last thing we wanted was to have 5 and 6-year-olds on a bus any longer than necessary, just waiting for more kids to get on. Also, it's quicker in terms of time because those buses we need for athletics. So we've got to get those buses back to the yard because we need some buses for after-school programs, but those drivers are also our custodians to finish their routines in the school to wrap up the day. So getting off the bus is much quicker than putting kids on the bus in the afternoon.
I'm glad we're going to be able to do that, because I know it was a priority for parents to get their kids home as early as possible for after-school activities also.
Correct.
Alexis?
I don't know that this is necessarily a question, more of a statement or a concern, but on the way in, I assume that we're going to figure out a system so that the children are getting off at the correct locations and that we don't lose a little 5-year-old getting off at BV and they should be at FGL. I don't know that that should fall solely on the bus driver.
No,
They've got a lot to.
Yeah, Liz is on that. She's talked to her transportation friends in other districts that are organized this way. I should have mentioned she's doing her best practice research as well. And I don't want to speak for her, and I know she hasn't made a decision. She'll consult with the principals. But yeah, they'll have different like color-coded tags, a laminated tag that is on their zipper, or some way to identify them, what school they go to in the morning, or what stop that they get off at. Absolutely.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Lisa?
I was just wondering, Joe, what the plans were for meetings with parents to help inform them of these changes and to provide them an opportunity to ask questions as well.
Yeah, and working with the elementary PTAs, this was a discussion we started with them in the spring, revisited in the summer, and then came together in mid-October for the survey. We agreed that we would let that survey drive the interest, and then we would plan meetings either at the elementary schools, virtually, I guess, right now, to do Q&As, or also produce FAQs and save the time we spent with each other to do a Q&A or address some of their concerns. So we know what the interests or some of the concerns were last year. We want to compare that to see if that's still a priority this year, but we're going to use those survey results. That is why it was important on the PTA. The PTA believed it was important for that survey to be open-ended, so that any and all concerns can be voiced and not just directed, or pushed, so we could have a faster analysis. But that will drive the content of what those discussions are. And, there'll be questions around special ed or curriculum instruction, transportation, and like we did last year, we'll have our department leaders there to be able to articulate the vision.
Jen, do you have any questions at the moment?
No, I think most of our questions are good.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Okay.